Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Thursday, November 16th. Thanks to another episode. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Talks with the Hispanic Mechanic. All are welcome to view, and no one is here to be judged or discriminated against due to the title of Talks with the Hispanic Mechanic. Today, my guest is Cheryl Evans, and she is a business coach, and the name of her company is?
Cheryl.WTF.
Okay, what's the WTF? Like
it's
we all know.
Exactly what
is
you
it?
think.
Okay, so
I take businesses from what the to wicked transformations.
Wow, great name, great title. I like the branding, it's different.
Thank you.
And it really screams out at me. When I first met you, I met Cheryl at a BNI meeting. We were in a business exchange network, a BNI club in Doylestown, and immediately gravitated to her because of it was just such a different trademark branding.
Yep.
Really popped out at me. And, you know, as a business owner before, you know, I was really interested about you being a business coach. So tell me a little bit about how this all came about, how you got into the business, and.
So it was kind of accidental. When I was 18, I started working for a new startup that was a title insurance agency. And I spent about 5 years with them working side by side with the owner and helped her grow the business to 5 times its original size.
Oh.
And then I went out on my own offering outsourced services to title companies and real estate agents. But I'd made a lot of connections in the industry, and pretty soon I was referred a new title company startup who needed to know everything there was about running a title company.
Okay, what time frame were we talking about? What was the year when that happened?
This was 2001.
Okay, so very good time.
Yep.
For the real estate market.
Yes, real estate was a really good place to be right then.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I kind of shifted from outsourced services to helping this new startup, and more referrals for new startups came. So I've done a lot of work with title agencies, real estate agents, loan officers, a lot of work with new startups. And it just kind of flowed from there, and I've worked all over the world in all kinds of different industries at this point with businesses, everything from new startups and solopreneurs to global corporations.
Interesting. So at one time you had your own title agency, is that correct?
I did, yeah.
Wow. And how long did you have that for?
So I opened that in 2003, and I survived the crash in 2008, only to have my underwriter go out of business, file for bankruptcy in 2011, and that killed my company.
Wow. Okay, so you pivot and shift when something like that happens, and
Yep.
you know, thank God you had the wherewithal to do that. That's a scary thing that, you know, to go through. You know, one day you're open and all's good, and like a sudden set down, you know. What was it like to go through that and then, you know, change your perspective and just dive right into something else? I mean, that had to be pretty intense and pretty quick.
I call that time in my life a time of cataclysmic change. Everything changed overnight. I mean, I literally received a cease and desist order with 24 hours notice on my title company. And fortunately, I had a consulting client who needed a lot more help, and I was able to shift really quickly to ramp that up. So literally overnight, I went from most of my time being spent in the real estate world to most of my time being spent in the software world and the project management world. But within that same year, I got divorced, I sold my house, I moved 2 hours away, everything in my life changed.
So, you know, you had what I would call like an Armageddon kind of year.
Yeah.
Right? So, kind of like the fall and then the rise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, know what you're talking about. In the last 2 years, I've experienced something similar. So,
yeah.
And
it's
that's
a lot to go through.
Yeah, it is. And it's part of what this platform is about, too, to help others realize that when all is lost, it's not the end of the world. You know, it's actually an opportunity to open new doors and rebuild. And
it really is, you know.
Maybe have a more solid foundation. And I'm sure your personal life was deeply affected by all of that.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, you know, all my social life changed, my family life changed, my business life changed. But, you know, we both have a background in real estate, and I always kind of equate this to construction. And, you may have an old dilapidated building and you've got these gorgeous plans for this new building that's going to go up and provide so much value to the community. But the only way to build that building is to knock the first one down.
Right.
And sometimes our lives are like that. You have to make space for something new and bigger and better.
Yeah, I like the way you phrased that, make space. So, kind of like going through that over the last 2 years where, you're analyzing everything and getting rid of what's not working to make space for what's coming in. You don't know if it's going to work or not, but you welcome it in because it's new. It's a new perspective. And it's change. And people are very terrified of change.
They are.
How are you with that, by the way?
Love-hate relationship, which,
right.
I think most people can relate to, but they just aren't on the absolutely hated side. I've gone through enough radical change in my life to know that I land on my feet and good things come of it.
Right.
And I know how to take advantage of opportunities when I see them, which really helps with that kind of change. But, it's never comfortable.
Keyword. I was just going to respond to you with part of my experience over the last 2 years. And that's absolutely right, what you're saying. But for me, I found that, I always welcome change. I was never scared of change. And I'm a big risk taker, right? So I welcome change. I think it's a positive thing. As long as it's well-researched and you're sure about what direction you're going, right? And your intuition.
You can't always be sure about that.
Right. But you gotta follow your gut. You gotta follow your intuition, right? So I like the phrase comfortable because right now, over the last 2 years, I felt uncomfortable because of the changes I was making and I was getting out of my comfort zone.
Yes.
So for those of you watching, it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just follow your gut and know that you're on the right path.
Yeah, definitely.
And even if you're not, there's other things coming. So you just got to stay positive. And
one of my favorite lessons that I've learned is there's no such thing as failure. Either you learn something or you succeed. And so, you can take that concept and you can embrace being uncomfortable because at the end of the day, you can't fail. You're going to go out, you're going to try this change, you're going to do it, and if nothing else, you're going to learn something, and that's going to lead you into the next thing. My biggest successes have come from things I've learned in experiences that others might have said were failures. But I learned something, so I don't see it that way.
This is true, and I think when you're out of your comfort zone, that is when you're learning.
Yes.
And I really feel that it's also a part of growth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So learning and growth, the two biggest things when you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's a great time to explore and educate and really try to figure things out. What's working, what's not, and again, pivot and shift. And
can I touch on a mental health aspect of change?
Oh, absolutely. Bring that on. Yeah.
Most people don't know or realize when they meet me, but I am both autistic and ADHD. And it's a really weird combination to have both. But that means that half of me is really, really resistant to change, the autistic part. And then the other half of me just, loves to embrace all the new things that are interesting. And so it's a bit of a tug of war internally.
Wow, Cheryl, I would have never pegged you for going through or having any of that type of, I wouldn't call it an illness or a disease. It's just there's such a stigma attached to.
Oh, it is. It's such a stigma.
Mental health, and I struggle with anxiety, depression. Who doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, everybody
there's no
has
such
their
thing as
struggles.
a perfect.
No.
So let me ask you a personal question.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? How do you manage that?
One step at a time, one day at a time.
Right.
There's a term called neurodivergent, which I really like. And it refers to mental health conditions where your brain actually functions differently. And that's very much autism and ADHD.
Okay, back that up. Say that phrase again.
Neurodivergent.
Okay.
So, as opposed to neurotypical. So your typical brain, the neurology, works in a typical way. And for somebody who's neurodivergent, your brain works differently. Which is why an autistic person tends to like routine and that comfort
Structure.
zone and resistant to change.
Right.
And that ADHD person tends to have lots of different interests and, always chasing the squirrel and the next shiny thing, because their brain works differently. And so
it's that short attention span.
Yeah.
It's always like back and forth. Or just...
It's ADHD, attention hyperactive deficit disorder.
Yeah.
It's really badly named because people with ADHD or ADD, they call it now, don't actually have a deficit of attention. What they have is a brain that responds to interest instead of risk and reward. And so it looks like a short attention span because they won't pay attention to something they're not interested in. But when they're interested, they can hyper-focus. And that's where you hear those stories about the parents complaining about their ADD kid who can't pay attention to their math homework for 5 minutes,
right,
but will play video games for 14 hours straight.
Right. Yeah.
They're following the interest rather than the risk and reward.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a brain, it's a person. I mean, I myself am guilty of that.
Yeah.
If something doesn't have my interest, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think it just kind of ramps up
I think
from a
right
neurotypical brain to an ADHD brain of just how difficult it is to force it to focus when there's no interest. But yeah, I mean, everybody, they procrastinate things they don't want to do because you don't want to do them.
Right.
And it's always harder to do the things that you don't want to do. But, having that knowledge of how my brain works and why it works the way it does is part of how I cope. Because when I understand what it's doing and why, then I can find solutions. And so it's one of the reasons that my logo is the super goat, because I've figured out how to turn what could be deficits into superpowers.
That's incredible. So, I find it amazing that you are where you are today, given the fact of what you just shared with me. So how do you go about looking at a business, analyzing it, talking to the owner? I'm sure there's just so much that goes into it. You gotta deal with different personalities, right? You gotta deal with different businesses, be it retail where people are drawn to the establishment, or a service where somebody's actually physically going somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
Lots of different business models, lots of different industries.
Lots of different personalities, employees.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's, my ADHD brain loves all of the variety. And, it's fascinating to me to encounter these different problems and solve them. And because my brain works differently, at least experientially, it seems that I solve problems in a different way. That's what people tell me all the time. I'll say something that seems fairly simple and straightforward to me, and light bulbs just go off for the people I'm talking to. I never thought of it that way.
Right.
So it's part of what makes me a really good business coach, because I do look at things in a different way. I process information in a different way. So I come up with solutions that are different.
So is it safe to say that you're an out-of-the-box thinker?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
get
like
that.
being inside
I get
the box.
that. Yeah. I'll share with you that in real estate, I think my biggest gift is that my biggest asset to a client would be that out-of-the-box thinking where, we got a problem here. Houston,
Yep.
we got a problem.
Yes.
And I'm able to look at, I just see it as an algebraic expression. And how do you solve that?
Yes.
There's more than one way to look at it, right?
Yep.
So,
I think our schools don't really teach enough critical thinking, problem solving skills. And, I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do in the world, is learn how to problem solve.
Yeah.
Because,
I think
every challenge is a problem.
How did you develop that talent? Or did you always have it?
I think I credit my mom a little bit. She's a very logical, rational thinker. She was a computer programmer for much of my early childhood. So she always communicated in a very logical, rational way. So I learned from her how to think that way. And then part of it too has been, I wasn't diagnosed until my late 30s. So I spent most of my life knowing that there was something really different about me that just doesn't really seem to work.
Now, let me ask you this. During that time frame, growing up and all that, how did you experience your social interaction with the world? Was it hard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And getting diagnosed at 30.
36.
36.
Yeah.
So that's a long time.
Yeah.
Were you on any medications during that time?
No, because I didn't know there was anything wrong with me.
Right.
Well, I mean, I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't know what it was or what to do about it. And so, yeah, my social interactions were really difficult through, well, all of my life. They're still difficult on occasion. I've gotten better at it, but it's required an awful lot of both introspection and observation. What comes naturally to other people, I've had to teach myself. And it's part of the reason why people don't really realize that I'm ADHD or autistic when they meet me, because I've learned patterns of behavior that other people do naturally. And I've figured out how to.
So you had to really kind of go back in and kind of train yourself.
Oh yeah.
At 36.
Well, throughout my life.
Right,
Before I was ever diagnosed, I was doing this part of unconscious, and then as I got older, more consciously, where I'd have a situation happen in my life and it didn't go very well. And I kind of step back and think about it, like, okay, well, that didn't work. So next time I encounter a situation like that, what should I do? And if I didn't have the answer, I'd go out and observe. Okay, well, what do other people do in this kind of situation? What do they say? How do they act? How do they move their body? What does that body language look like? What does that conversation sound like? What should you look like?
Yeah.
How do you cut your hair? What clothing do you wear?
What is the appropriate response?
Which fork do you use at dinner?
At the same time, I'm thinking to myself, did you follow the herd, or were you always on your own path?
I was always different.
Your own leader. For me, it was I never wanted to be part of the group. It was always I don't like this, I'm gonna go over there because that's what I'm drawn to, right? Or I'm gonna follow my own path.
I always marched to the beat of my own drummer, because I never really totally fit in to any social circles.
Right.
I didn't really find a social setting that I was comfortable in until I was in high school, and I was one of the goth kids.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough that there were a lot of them in my high school, and so I found a family.
Where'd you go to high school?
North Penn in Hatfield.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, Lansdale. North Penn,
yeah.
Lansdale, technically.
Yeah,
I lived in Hatfield.
Yeah.
But I kind of found my people. In fact, I'm still friends with a lot of people I was friends with in high school. They embraced the fact that I was different. And that was okay. I could be different and weird amongst them, and it was accepted.
What is so different about being goth?
A lot of it's aesthetics, a lot of black. I wear the trench coat.
And Doc Martens.
Yeah. Yep. So a lot of it's aesthetic. There's certainly a musical aspect to the subculture.
Yeah.
But largely it is really just tolerance. That's really what earmarks the goth subculture, is that there's a tolerance and acceptance for people who don't fit into the mainstream.
And I think it's also a form of self-expression in an artistic way.
Yeah, it can be. Absolutely.
Right? So that's the thing that I always looked at. You could recognize anybody that's goth, you know that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can spot them from a mile away.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different styles, and, I would really look at it and just see the person and say, wow, okay, kind of a very different take. It's pretty interesting to see what people do with it.
Yeah. It's amazing how many different things you can do with black.
Yeah.
You play a lot of a texture, of texture. But,
yes.
But it's really just the fact that you can be yourself, and whatever that looks like is okay.
And you know what? It takes a lot of courage to not follow the herd.
Oh, it does, yeah.
And to stand out, you're bringing that attention to yourself. It's you got to be, I think, very secure in yourself to.
There is a level of not give a crap.
Right.
That you have to stand out from the herd. And I can't say that I've embraced that my entire life. I was really good about that in high school, and part of that was because I had a support network. throughout my 20s, I very much donned the normal suit. And I kind of had to, both personally and professionally, in order to kind of survive my life at that point.
Sure.
I was a business consultant at the age of...
You were running a title agency, for crying out loud, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was running a title agency in my 20s, which is unheard of. Most people, when they open their own title agency, they're in their 40s or 50s. Yeah. And I was a business consultant at the age of 21. And that is also unheard of. That's really not a thing. So I spent my 20s with people thinking I was 30. That was always really fun because, I'd end up talking to them on the phone before I ever met them in person. All of my business was word of mouth referrals. And so by the time I met them in person, I'd already established some trust and they've realized that I had expertise and I knew what I was talking about. And then inevitably at some point in that first conversation, they'd break down and ask me how old I was. Because they had spent the first half of that conversation trying to reconcile the person they thought they were going to meet with the person sitting in front of them who was very much younger than they were expecting.
That's pretty cool.
And I'd always respond, well, how old do you think I am? And inevitably they'd say 30 because it was the youngest they thought I could possibly be to know what I know. And the oldest I could possibly be given how young I look. And I always looked younger than I was in my 20s. So yeah, they had a lot of cognitive dissonance with that. But yeah, I kind of had to don the normal suit and look a little bit more like what they expected. Because boy, if I walked in looking like this at 20 years old, 22 years old, they wouldn't.
So, yeah, I get it. Safe to say you've been in the business coaching world for over 20 years?
Yeah. Yep. Over 20 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell me, give me some stories of your best and worst case scenarios.
Oh, goodness.
Failing business, you step in and turn it around. Talk to me about some of your best clients and what is the most common problem you see with people coming to you? Like, why is my business failing?
Yeah, so, the most common one that people think they're coming to me for is, how do I do more sales? How do I do my marketing better so I can make more money and have a better business? A lot of times the problem is not their sales. The problem might be in part their marketing and their messaging. But a lot of times the problem is far more behind the scenes. It's in their operations. It's how do they do the things that they're doing? What does their customer service look like? What is the experience of the customer when working with them? How efficient is their staff? How motivated is their staff? When you don't treat your staff well and they don't feel appreciated and valued, then
that's a low morale. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And it affects business.
It does.
It affects clients too.
Yeah.
Clients see that.
Absolutely.
I could see that a mile away. I spot that a mile away.
The better you treat your staff, the better they're going to treat your customers, the better business you're going to have.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times people come to me and they think the problem is one thing and it's not. I actually don't really like talking to the owners of the business nearly as much as I do the people who work in it.
The management team, the employees?
No. Bottom rung. I want to talk to the lowest people in the company.
Interesting.
They know what's going on. They know where the problems are. They might not know how to fix them, but they have thoughts and ideas. They're pretty sure what's not going to work, but they'd absolutely know what's wrong. And when you know what's wrong, then you can fix the problem.
Got it. Wow.
So
there you have it.
Yeah.
There you have it.
If your business isn't working, go talk to the lowest rung people, the boots in the ground. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
Then you're going to know what you need to fix.
The army in the trenches.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So any type of business that you prefer over another?
The one that is open to change.
Great answer.
Yeah. Because so many people, circle us right back around. Couldn't have planned that better. But so many people are so resistant to change.
Yeah, and leading into that, do you see owners getting in their own way?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah. If you want success working with a business coach or a consultant, you have to be willing to embrace change. You have to be willing to have been wrong. You have to set your ego aside.
I think the biggest thing, too, is giving up control.
Yeah. Yep.
It was one of the things when I had my carpet cleaning business. I had to see everything was getting done my way or the highway, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And after, growing to like 7 employees and keeping them, was a struggle because this is like physical work.
Yeah.
it's the right attitude, the right approach.
Yep.
I changed my perception of, hey, I'm paying you this, I want to get this out of you. It was more like, hey, I need you to help me get to the next level.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the tools
Mm-hmm.
to get us there,
Yep.
but you're part of this team.
Yeah.
So inclusive versus, a hierarchy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that really shifted everything, because the guys were willing to do more and give me more, and along with that came better pay, bonuses, and stuff like that. And that's
Absolutely.
when the company really started to explode and grow.
A person who is marching along and think they are leading, but nobody's following,
Mm-hmm.
is not a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I very much like the servant leadership style of leading. As a business owner, as a manager, you really need to be there to enable your employees to do all the wonderful things that you want them to do. And, the best question you can ever ask is, how can I help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing is lead by example.
Yes.
Lead by example.
Yeah.
So if, you're looking to get something done a certain way, you need to be in it with it.
Yeah.
In it and with it.
Yep.
You can't be like, little Napoleon.
Yeah.
That's not the way it gets done.
Yeah.
So.
I like business owners who are either involved the right amount in their business,
Mm-hmm.
that they are helping and leading, but not too controlling.
Right.
Or the business owner who has totally stepped away,
Mm.
and they have hired people who are smarter than them, and they know it, and they trust them.
Mm.
And they're like, I own the business, I am going to profit, I am going to go and live my life and enjoy it, and that is why I opened my own business. Great. More power to you. Get out of everyone's way.
Right. Very
So
good.
lead or get out of the way.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So tell me, you're in Montgomery Bucks. Tell me what areas you service.
The whole
Are you
world.
the whole world?
The whole
Listen
world.
to that. So she's online. She can set up a Zoom meeting,
Yep.
analyze your business from wherever.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Most of the work I do is remote, and long before COVID made remote a thing for the rest of the world.
yes.
Business strategy. How are you doing the things you're doing? How can you do them better? Whether that is your sales and marketing or your internal operations or your customer service, I can bring action to inspiration.
That sounds incredible. Well, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
If people want to find you, where can they find you?
Cheryl.wtf.
And that's Cheryl with a Y. CHERYL.
Yeah. WTF.
There you have it. Again, thanks for joining us, folks, for another episode of Talks with the Hispanic Mechanics. You can go to my website at talkswiththehispanicmechanic.com to play this episode or to request being a host or a guest. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Bye, folks.